Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone in Facebook world. This is Bumi Eminanjo here again with another edition, I guess we're calling it, of a conversation with authors. And I have here with me today the incredible, amazing Carole Boston Weatherford. Hi, Carole.
Hi, Bumi. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for doing this. I am so excited to be having this conversation. And first of all, happy Juneteenth, right?
Yeah, same to you. Same to you.
Thank you. Thanks. So yeah, we'll just jump right in. I think you and I, last time we talked, I explained there's a 20-second delay. But we'll just have our conversation and then it'll just play in Facebook as it does, and everybody will be 20 seconds behind, but that's fine.
Okay.
So everyone, I encourage you to drop any questions that you may have in the comment section, and we'll get to them. This is your opportunity to ask any questions you want of Carole. So, and has gracefully agreed to answer those questions. So, but quick introduction about Atlas Book Club. Like I said, my name is Bumi Eminanjo. I'm the founder of Atlas Book Club, and we're a book subscription books company focused on globally diverse children's books. And you can learn more about us at www.atlasbookclub.com. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, when I was thinking about today, and I knew that I wanted us to do something to celebrate Juneteenth, and I reached out to Carole, and when she said yes, I was really happy to have this conversation. And this is your second time here. You were last here in March, where we did the live readings. We read The Roots of Wrath. That was one of the books we featured in our Atlas boxes. And so that was really awesome to have you here, but we didn't get a chance to really dig in. So I'm glad that we're getting this opportunity to really dig into some history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. First, so today's Juneteenth. Can you tell? And I know a lot of people know what Juneteenth is all about. You know, there's been a lot of posts, and it's been getting a lot of heightened, I guess, focus the past few weeks because of what's going on in our country. But for those who haven't, can you just tell us a little bit, if you can, in the short amount of time that we have, about Juneteenth?
Sure. Juneteenth is the first African-American holiday, and it marks the date in history, June 19th, 1865, when the last enslaved people were freed in the United States. They were freed, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. There are several possible reasons that have been floated around. One is that the mule was slow. The messenger was running behind schedule. Or the masters wanted to get a couple more cotton crops. Mm-hmm. That seems most feasible to me. But at any rate, you can imagine that news of freedom for those who were still in bondage at that, even after the Civil War ended, was cause for great rejoicing. Mm-hmm. And the holiday has been celebrated in Texas and in parts of Oklahoma and Kansas and Louisiana for many years. I wrote my book, Juneteenth Jamboree, 25 years ago, and at that time, very few localities had Juneteenth celebrations. So I'd get invited, maybe to one celebration a year, and you can only go to one because if I'm just one person and it's just one day. But now, not this year, but generally, I get requests to be in more than one place at a time. This year I got more requests, but I had to do everything virtually, so I was able to fill all of the requests. Mm-hmm. So it's a holiday that African Americans look back on to celebrate resilience and survival of bondage and celebrate our freedom. So it's a significant holiday. There's currently a bill that Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, or it's Cory Booker and John Cornyn. Anyway, there's a bill that they would like to put before the Senate. I don't know if it'll make it or not, but that this is not the first time that there has been a push for a federal holiday. In fact, even before I wrote the book, there was a group, I think out of Louisiana or Texas, that was pushing for a Juneteenth holiday. So if we're able to get a federal holiday, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Is it celebrated as a holiday in certain states right now?
I don't know which states, have it as an official holiday. I do know that Texas does.
Okay.
And, different areas, in different areas, different organizations and institutions, and sometimes even parks and rec departments sponsor Juneteenth celebrations, but I'm not aware of a state, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist as a paid holiday or an official holiday in other states, but I am aware of the holiday in Texas.
Yeah. So you know what's interesting? You and I talked a few days ago, and I mentioned how I grew up in Nigeria, and growing up in Nigeria at the time anyway, there wasn't anything in the curriculum about African American history, about Black history. So when I moved here, when I was 16 years old, that's when I started learning, and I had to make an intentional effort to learn about Black history, about Juneteenth, and other parts of the civil rights movement. And you said something that was really interesting. You said, well, there are a lot of people here in this country who don't know that history. So, and that's because,
right. And,
yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that Atlas book clubs exist, because parents really do have to supplement if they want to give their kids a complete picture of history and a complete picture of the world.
Yeah.
It's not all going to be taught. It's not all angles are not taught in schools. Only the history that suited the needs of the ruling class was and still is taught in schools. And and often if people from the African diaspora are mentioned, it's not in the best light. We're not given agency. And it's a footnote to something else that was going on. So we're not really, we haven't been, our history has not been integrated into the curriculum, fully integrated into the curriculum. And if parents want their children to know, they're going to have to teach it to them themselves. So, when you came here, you might not have been that far behind your classmates. You may not have known that, because you probably felt, at 16, you probably felt very different going to a new school anywhere. But you probably weren't too far behind them in terms of your grasp of African American history.
Yeah, and because I was talking to my son, and I asked him, did they say anything about Juneteenth? Because he's going into 8th grade. And of course we talk about it at home, and we talk about African American history at home, because it's like you said, it's so important to supplement that education, but they said nothing. That is not being taught in school. He's going into 8th grade. My daughter is going into the 6th grade, and that has just not been a part of the curriculum. So what can we do? Because there's a lot of information out there right now. And so what my intention is with these conversations is to have parents walk away with practical things that they can do and that they can implement. So there are two things, right? Of course, supplementing school, but then what can they do as parents to get the school to have this kind of information added to the curriculum? Any suggestions?
I mean, some of that has to do with who's elected to school boards. Some areas board members are elected, and others they are appointed. So has to do with just pushing at the state level for certain stories to be included or certain books to be included. Certainly, parents can push public libraries or request that public libraries diversify their collection. Even parents can even be as specific as to request certain books that they would like to see. And librarians, I know public librarians do respond to those kinds of requests. And I would think that parents who are involved in PTAs can or involved in their children's schools can do that at the school level as well. And request that a librarian carry certain
Yeah.
books, purchase certain books for the collection. And,
Yeah.
parents, I think, should go to the school library and see, what books are there. Look at, go in
Yeah.
the, particularly in the easy reading section where you can, it's just a matter of pulling books off, go to the biography section and see how many books about African and African American history are included in the
Yeah.
collection.
Yeah.
Request that more be included.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
And
it's important.
yeah, it is. It is because our kids spend a significant majority of their days in school.
Right.
Most of their time is spent in school. So, definitely that makes a significant impact. And then as far
Another
as
thing I think parents can do also, and you may want to even think about this for your book club, is
Mhm.
they can educate themselves, because no
Yes,
one, an adult cannot teach what they don't know. I don't care whether the
absolutely.
adult is a parent or a teacher. If you don't know it, you can't teach it. And an
Absolutely.
easy way to cheat and get some quick information is from a children's book. So if parents want to learn, then maybe they ought to read a middle grade book about a subject, or even a young adult book about the subject. It doesn't have to be, a scholar home that's going to take them, weeks to read when they have to get their child ready for bed and work and do all these other things.
Yeah,
But you can you can learn a lot from children's books. So I would
yeah,
say parents, there may be some books that are, surveys of history, that,
yeah,
or collective biographies that would introduce the parent to information that they might not have,
yeah, yeah,
because you don't
yeah.
know what's been omitted unless you've learned it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great suggestion. Um, so here we at Atlas, we always talk about the danger of a single story and how, it's important that the books that you're selecting for your library is not just about one single story, but that we explore the diversity in stories. So bringing that into this context is exploring the diversity and the richness in African American history. So a lot of questions that I get is, do you have any books about the civil rights movement, or do you have any books about, anti-racism books? But there are so many stories within the civil rights movement, right?
Right.
You and I talked about the Harlem Renaissance. It's not just, one story like the story of Martin Luther King, but parents should make, which is an extremely important story, but parents should make the effort to diversify, their library when it comes to the different stories that exist within,
Right. And I
African
think
American
one
history.
thing that's important, when you talk about these periods, is to make sure that women's voices are included in the stories
Yes.
as well, because we can look at the Harlem Renaissance. Many of the books about the Harlem Renaissance focus on the more well-known people, like like Langston
Mhm.
Hughes, and he's my favorite poet. I have nothing against him.
Yeah.
But there were women of the Harlem Renaissance. Nikki Grimes has a book,
Mhm.
a new book about women poets of the Harlem Renaissance.
Mm.
There were lots of women in the civil rights movement, and other than Rosa Parks, most of them have been pushed to the background.
Yeah.
That I wrote about Fannie Lou Hamer, and I was surprised how many people had never heard of her.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we need to make sure as mothers that
Mhm.
that we present to our daughters and to our sons women's
Mhm.
stories as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that just makes the point. There's such rich stories within African American history. And speaking of which, we have this. So I'm going to show a few books just to give some folks some ideas. So of course we have Baby Flo. So this is from Lee and Low Publishers, and Florence Mills, story of Florence Mills. So that's a good one. And then of
The
course,
jazz singer who sang with Duke Ellington, and
yes.
she was fantastic.
She was, and again, talking about highlighting stories of women,
Yeah.
during that time. And then, of course, we have. So I want to talk about a couple of your books too. So you showcased one already, but then here's another one, Freedom in Congo Square. This is such a stunning, beautiful book. I
It's illustrated
absolutely.
by Gregory Christie. It was our third book together.
Yeah. And this is such a fantastic book because it just talks about how the slaves found a way to find joy, in
Right,
the
right,
midst of it all, found a way to find joy. And again, it lends to that idea of showcasing different parts of African American history, right? Of
right,
course,
right.
there are certain stories that we know very well because they're told over and over again, but stories like this are just as important. So this
Right,
is, yeah,
right.
Freedom in Congo
So,
Square by,
yeah,
yeah.
Congo Square was a place in New Orleans, for those of you who don't know, where African Americans could go, African Americans, both enslaved and free, could go on Sunday afternoons. Because of Catholicism and the Sabbath law, everyone was off on Sunday. And even the enslaved people were given Sunday afternoon off. And so after a week of this relentless labor, forced labor that was, the life of the enslaved person, uh, Black people could go to Congo Square, which was it was an urban area out. It's in the, I think you call it Treme area now, or Treme, excuse me if I mispronounced it. But it's, in New Orleans. And they went there and they could gather, which was in some parts of the South, enslaved people could not gather without a white person being present. So they could gather, first of all, they could congregate. They could also speak their African languages. They could trade goods that they had hunted, grown, or made. They could dance. And most importantly, they could drum. But they could also practice their African religions. So as a result of that, some Africanisms survived in the area, among them the beat that eventually found its way into jazz. So that the fact that Congo Square was in New Orleans made it the birthplace of jazz, because that was where where African rhythms survived.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So Lenny, I'm gonna check in here to see if we have any questions. Okay, no questions so far. So I want to show one more book and then we'll move on to the next question. This is another book by Carole, The Roots of Rap. And, we talked about this earlier. We had a read aloud here on Atlas Book Club in March, I believe. So again, going to the knowing African-American history, knowing your history, but knowing the different parts of it and having some diversity in the books that showcase African-American history. So I wanted to show that before I forgot. So going back to Juneteenth and thinking about what's going on in our country right now, Black Lives Matter, and just the constant fight for equality. Can you talk about that a little bit and bring that history into context today?
Sure. This has been. It's been really. I'm almost at a loss for an adjective to describe what kind of time it's been. It is in our country and what it's meant to me. I have been just so heartened by the protest and to see young people, taking up this mantle. Not only because it's much needed, but let me go back. Let me describe myself when I was the age of some of the protesters. I was living in Washington, D.C., attending American University, using public transportation. And if you've ever been to Washington, there are a lot of circles in Washington. And every circle has a statue. Now, this is at the time when Gil Scott-Heron's song "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised" was popular, and it was the civil rights movement had ended, and so had the Black Power movement. This is in the mid-70s. So I'm, riding these buses around the circles, and I look at the statues, and I think, I can't wait for until the revolution comes. I would just imagine that a revolution would come, and these statues would be toppled over. And now it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening. But that was, over 40 years ago when I imagined that. And, at that time, I knew that things were not truly equal Yet.
Mhm.
I had witnessed the civil rights movement. I was too young to have been on the front lines of it, but I had witnessed it. So
Mhm.
I've done a lot of living now, and here we are, and a Black man is murdered in the streets of Minneapolis by a police officer, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds,
Mm.
just, really asking for his mother.
Mm.
And when I heard that he asked for his mother, I said that all mothers have been summoned. If we can't get out in the streets, we need to at least be praying for justice. We need to be supporting the movement in some way.
Yeah.
We need to be encouraging our young people if they are involved.
Yeah.
But when we can't as mothers, we can't let that slide. We can't let that
Yeah.
go. And you notice I'm not saying as Black mothers,
Yeah.
as mothers of any hue, we cannot tolerate that, because that's not the kind of world we want to raise our children in.
Yeah.
No mother wants to raise their children in the kind of world where somebody is going to be killed in the streets like that by someone who's sworn to protect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you. It's a call to all mothers. I mean, that's very powerful, that statement right there.
yeah, and it's also a call to our nation. The activism that we are witnessing among young people, is a call to our nation that our young people don't want this kind of world.
Yeah.
They know right from wrong. They know injustice, and they're not happy with the world that predominantly white men have created.
Yeah.
They're not happy with it, and if they were, one incident would not have driven them into the streets.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they were otherwise happy, that would not, I teach at the college level, so I know, first of all, by the absence of males on college campuses. Males are now underrepresented on college campuses. They're still going to college. But I noticed that over 15 years ago, I've been teaching for almost 20 years, and I noticed, well, where are the guys? I teach at an HBCU, but you can go to any college, and the number of males that are going to higher education are dipping. And I mean, Black, white, otherwise, males.
Right.
The numbers are going down. And why? Because they don't believe that it'll do anything for them. They don't believe that it will get them the kind of job they want. They don't believe that it'll get them the kind of lives that their parents had, or even they don't want that kind of life. So our males are really, they've lost faith. And that is, we can see it not only in among the protesters who may be of a similar mind,
Yeah.
who we agree with, but you can see it in the protesters in the alt-right movement. If those people had opportunities, their parents wouldn't be able to sell them lives.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be out in the streets either.
Yeah.
So this is probably perhaps more political than what
but it's reality.
Discuss on your show, but a lot of it has to do with redistribution of wealth.
Yeah.
And creating opportunities for everybody.
Yep.
And giving healthcare to everybody.
Yeah.
And the virus has really really brought into focus the disparities, both in a racial sense and in an economic sense. The people who are on the bottom rungs of the economic ladder on the front lines, they got to go to work.
It's really highlighted it. I mean,
some of us can work at home.
Absolutely.
They can't work at home.
Yeah.
They're delivering bringing our groceries to our door if we're afraid to go out.
Working still at the restaurants, at the fast food restaurants, and
they're in the gig economy, and so that's we've got to do better. I think as a country, both in healing, the racial divide, healing a lot of these divides, and coming up with ways that we can create the kind of world that our young people will respect us for and will want to be a part of.
Yeah. And I think as parents, it really starts with us, because adults now who, like for example, the lady, I can't remember her name, Amy Cooper, the Central Park
Yeah.
lady,
Right.
those kind of people,
Mhm.
those kind of people don't just come out of a vacuum. It doesn't just happen. It
No.
starts when they're kids. So it's
Yeah.
children, it's kids who grow up to
Right.
be
And
those people.
she knew exactly what she was doing. She was crying wolf, but in a real dangerous way.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
that's why, I think as parents, we have an obligation. We have an obligation to raise our kids in a manner such that they grow up to be kind, compassionate,
Right.
empathetic. And part of that is exposing them and teaching them about this country's history, the real history,
Right.
and
Right.
exposing them to different types of people and different types of cultures.
Yeah.
So, and I
Diverse,
said,
diverse books definitely create empathy. Talk about empathy.
exactly, it does. It does. And in one post that I posted maybe 3 weeks ago, I said hatred and racism is learned. They're not born that way, but compassion and empathy, that's learned too. And
Right.
so we as parents have the power to do that. And
Yeah. We
so,
have to model it. We have to model it.
and we, boom, there you go. There you go. Yeah, we have to model it
Yeah.
because our kids are just basically reflections of us, whether we want to
They
admit it or
are.
not.
They
You
are.
know, they really are. So, what I hate to say the word tips, but what actionable, if you could just say, give us 3 things, actionable things that parents can do to help, and we've talked about a few of them already, to help raise kids who are anti-racist.
Well, we talked about seeking out diverse books and
Yeah,
anti-racist books,
yeah,
teaching them a true history, a more complete history than is
yeah,
taught in schools. Modeling anti-racist behavior ourselves. That
yeah.
means stopping some of the labels. And I think also, we have the talk with our sons and just to an
Mhm.
extent our daughters. But I think we also need to have a talk when we're talking about being anti-racist. We need to explain that although racism exists, racism is a social construct. It
Yeah,
is not real. Race
yeah,
is not real. It
yeah,
was created to make one group superior over another, white
yeah,
people superior to people of color. But
yeah,
race is a social construct, and we need to, to let them know that
yeah,
although we may appear different because of that,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be this great divide that has become.
yeah, yeah. And it goes back to what you said that it's given some hope to see people of all colors, of
Oh,
all different backgrounds out there protesting, engaging in all forms of activism, because I was talking to the kids the other day, and that protesting is not the only form of activism.
right, right,
So you can engage in different forms of activism, and even if you're not out there with your family and your kids protesting, there are other ways to be involved, with
right,
kids,
right.
no matter how young. So I wanted to end with this. Let's see, and I want to be respectful of time. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move on. I want to end with this. As a mom, a Black woman, and I have 2 boys and a girl, and so there are a lot of our followers, Black parents who are hurting and who are worried and have some anxiety about some of the incidents in the past few weeks. What words of encouragement, what words can you offer them?
Well, let me just say that this isn't new, first of all.
Yeah,
This is not new. This has been going on for 400 years. The majority of us will survive. That doesn't mean that we can afford to lose, one life, and that we don't grieve and that we don't protest. But, we will survive. Um, we need to stick together right now. We need to figure out to know who our allies are, and we do need allies. So we need to, think about, how can we cultivate allies
Mm-hmm.
among people who might think they're not racist, but they're not anti-racist yet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
how can we help others become anti-racist? Does it mean? I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot of responsibility. It's a burden
Yeah.
because we might
Yeah.
have to teach some other people. I put up a post earlier this week that I said if white supremacy weren't so pervasive and ingrained, I would call it a cult.
Mm.
So what we're going through right now, and as a nation, is a reckoning about race.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with every reckoning, there must be some atonement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the atonement is going to look like. I mean, certainly there've been all these corporate statements that have come out.
Yeah.
Aunt
Yeah.
Jemima's going to be retired, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there have been some constructive discussions and some constructive steps
Mm-hmm.
in the right direction. But I view it as incremental.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond what is atonement going to look like? And finally, can we get to reparations?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to end, or we can be made equal until there are reparations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
as parents, a lot of I think we have to do a lot of what we've already been doing. You got to take care of home first.
Yeah.
And you take care of your children, reassure your own children. Certainly, we've got to have the talk with our sons, and we're going to have to probably have it earlier and earlier, and with daughters
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
We've got to continue having the talk. I'm sorry about that. But another thing we can do is turn off the TV, because
Self-care.
there's these, if you've seen the incident once, you've seen it enough.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to myself as well, because it's
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, how many times do we need to see George Floyd die?
Yeah.
He's died a million deaths. They played it so many times on TV. So we
Yeah.
need to turn off the TV, and not really because of that. We really need to turn off the TV because much of it is mindless, and much of it is not created by us for us,
Mm-hmm.
and much of it gives a skewed image of us,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
stereotypical image of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to turn off the TV and talk to our children. We need to connect with them.
Yeah.
Another thing that's been heartening to me about the protests is, the digital natives have been very involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't even know they could make phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
They're on, social media so much. And
Yeah.
they've called texting phone call. I talked to so-and-so and they're talking about text. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know they had interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're so into their devices.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love them. I have two of them in my two
Yeah.
millennials in my family, and
Yeah. Yeah.
X's in my family. But yeah, it's been heartening to actually see them, get
It
out
has.
and actually, do something in the real in the real world, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's see. One more look for questions. No questions. Okay. Well, thank you. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and give us some additional context and some additional historical information. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
And thanks. Oh, I did have one question that I'm seeing on my notes that I didn't ask. So especially because there's a lot of conversation around Juneteenth, and how do people celebrate it? That's the one question I wanted to ask that I didn't. I've seen a lot about it being a day of service, it being a day of learning. If you had to give us a couple of ideas of how to celebrate Juneteenth, and we can end on that note.
Well, let's just use a fun way, okay?
Yes. Yeah.
And I've participated in a lot of Juneteenth celebrations, and yes,
Okay.
they usually do engage some service organizations. They involve they usually feature some singing and some other types of music or African dance. There usually some crafts, but we all like to eat. So
yes,
make a red velvet cake. That is a traditional Juneteenth food, red velvet cake.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. And barbecue, because it started in Texas, barbecue is part of it.
Yeah.
Even if you're vegan, barbecue something.
Yes.
Put something on the grill. Have some smoked meat or smoked. I'm vegan.
Yeah.
So yeah, smoke something. And,
Yeah.
get
I
some
love it.
Yeah.
Barbecue and red velvet cake.
Red
Awesome.
velvet cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been a great conversation, and you can learn about Carole on her website, which I'll include in the I usually summarize our conversation, so I'll put that in the post, and I'll also put a list of her books, where you can buy her books. Her books are available everywhere that books are sold, and I'll include her website on the post as well. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Carole.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, and go make some red velvet cake, people. Bye. All right.